Folks, apologies. This is going to be the longest of these videos. That's because our memory system is probably one of the most important areas for how we design and facilitate learning. For a long period of time, people used to say, oh, memory is not important. It's all about thinking. And well, a lot of that is wrong, and I'm going to dispel some of those myths. So let's start with some key understanding. I think you know that there's a working memory system, a long-term memory system. Working memory has a capacity of about 7 plus or minus 2 bits. Some people say even less. And we know we're going to get stuff from working memory into long-term memory. And we also know it helps if that information is well organised, chunked up, meaningful to students, and sufficiently rehearsed. That's how we get it effectively from working memory to long-term memory. So to recap on working memory, it's our conscious system. I'm working in it now, and I'm having to manage the cognitive load of trying to say the right things and be economical with time. Now, in our working memory, we have to think situationally that we're in a lecture, we've got to try to make out what the key content is. If we're reading a textbook, we've got to sort of decipher the message. So it's where immediate thinking is ours, but it's stuck with this limited capability. And this is the basic problem that we have. They've got limited working memory, but it's where all this active mental work goes on. And if we overload it, we suffer from cognitive overload. And that's one of the big problems that we have with learning today. Quite simply, we've got to get information through working memory before it goes into long-term memory. And we try to get so much through, and often it just doesn't work. Now, here's the really important aspect. And I'm going to suggest with other people that long-term memory is the big area that we need to work on. It used to be thought it's a big dumping ground, a bit like our computer files. You know, we've got folders, we just stick stuff in and it stays there and it doesn't move. In fact, long-term memory is an active system in its own right. It organises itself. It actually thinks for us at a subconscious and unconscious level. But it's very powerful, and that's why sometimes that we might be working on a problem or we're trying to remember something we can't, and the following day we wake up and we're having breakfast and it just pops out. That's our long-term memory doing its job. And that's the fundamental basis of expertise. People are experts because they've got highly developed long-term memory systems. It's not simply about trying to think. When my car breaks down, I know that something's not working in it, but I can't fix it because I know nothing about it. So getting stuff into long-term memory, into organised, rich, deep structures of understanding is really, really important. And here's something that you'll probably never forget, the Maserati analogy. Quite simply, this is how it works. Once people, students, us, once we've got well-developed knowledge structures in the field, in our long-term memory system, we become super efficient because as we use our working memory to solve a problem in that field, it automatically opens up our whole memory system. So everything in our long-term memory system that's related to that area becomes available to us. That's why experts appear to be magical. It's because they've got Maseratis in their long-term memory. Some of the pedagogic implications, well, you should know these. Very obvious if we understand memory. Chunk lessons up into segments. Avoid cognitive overload. Make sure there's transitions, reinforcement. That's why we do that, because we're trying to build up an whole picture and the relationship to the parts. We're constantly working this relationship between working memory and long-term memory. Get students thinking, cognitive engagement, because that's what helps them make the connections and build understanding. Remember that? Go back to some of those earlier core principles. Key content, good thinking, builds understanding, and that's all bound up with our memory. It's not about memory versus thinking. It's the same process. In fact, memory is what's left after thinking, according to Daniel Willingham, and he earns a lot more money than me. Good visual representations work because they organise information if they're done well. Because recall is almost always visually triggered. It's their dominant system. So good visual representations help to make memory work better. And obviously, build in review. If we don't build in review, well, this is the kind of stuff that happens. Quite simply, after a few days, most is forgotten. And that's why a lot of lecturers complain, oh, I taught it 3 weeks ago, but the students don't seem to have learnt anything. No, because it's not been reviewed. Unless there's a number of reviews shortly after the learning episode, much is going to be lost. So here's our final slide here. Quite simply, this is our most, if you like, well-developed model of memory. It's pretty similar to the basic model. Working memory is the same, but now there is this strong dynamic relationship between working and long-term memory. As we pull stuff out of long-term memory into working memory, we fire those neural networks, we make it stronger, we can modify it, we put it back in a stronger position into long-term memory, and the long-term memory itself works to organize it and generates questions. So this whole area of memory system, it's a massive Russian doll principle. So if I've created a bit of cognitive overload here, go back, look at it a few times, check your understanding. It's going to be crucial to the way we design evidence-based instructional strategies.